Welcome to this quick video on advanced tools in Google Forms. While Google Forms has not necessarily added robust collaboration features like we've seen maybe in Docs or Slides, it has added some increased capability with new types of questions as well as how your form can be set up or navigated. One of those options is to create like branching or validation using sections. So when we say sections, we're talking about this button down here in the bottom right, the very bottom of the sort of add menu, and it says add section. And all that means is it's going to create, you see here at the bottom, effectively its own page. And then in doing that, it allows you to create options from that page about what you'd like to do next for the user. So for example, you'll see this is like a home page. This says this form has 37 sections. It doesn't mean that the user is going to see all 37 of those, but there are 37 sort of options or pages. Once this is done and it's responded here, I can continue to the next section. So one of the options then is once you insert a section to be able to tell it, once that section is done, where you'd like the user to be directed to. So you'll see here we're going to the next section, which is section 2. And then after that, we're going to the next section. But at some point then, you're going to see here when this happens, when something specific happens, you can actually direct them to a specific section. So in other words, if that's called logic branching. So we can insert a section with this, but then when we insert a section, so for example, I'll flip over to this over here and we'll insert a section, and that's going to go in down here, right here at the top. We can tell it after we do section 1 that we'd like it to go to section 2, go to the next section, or automatically submit the form without moving on. Same thing here in section 2. Then we can tell it what we'd like it to do. Because it's the last section, it doesn't have options, but we have sections here. So when we create those sections, and this is something you may have done before, we can then create what's called logic branching, which means we can tell it after that section is complete, we'd like it to do this. Okay. Additionally, you can add what's called data validation. So if I click into a question, okay, and I'm here on the 3 dots, okay, and this has to be in a section. So we'll move this up into here, okay. Then we can do what's called go to section based on answer, okay. So this is a multiple choice option. So I can do go to section based on answer. And then based on my answer, I can tell it, like, if this question is correct, I want it to go to the next section. If it's not correct, like these other options are, I can redirect it then to a different section, or I can have it return back to section 1, effectively meaning, nope, you're going to go back to the beginning and you're going to have to redo that question again. Part of the data validation also exists if I have a short answer question. Okay. So maybe we have a question like this: how old are you? And it's accepting text. So when I have some sort of a non-multiple choice, so multiple choice or multiple mark, when I go to the section based on answer, I can drill them down by each individual response where I want it to go. If you have an open response question, for example here, I can go to response validation and I can say this has to be a number greater than 0, or this has to have a specific length, or this number has to be less than or equal to. So we have all of these different operators that we can use. And if that is not true, then we can put a custom error text in that the user would get, and it would redirect them then or make them answer that question again. So this is really useful if you're trying to, let's say, have somebody a specific number, or if we're doing multiple marks. So for example, here's a multiple mark question where I can also get that response validation. And let's say I have to say I have to select exactly 2 of these. So this would be good if you're like voting for something and you want kids to choose exactly 2 things or at least 2 things or whatever it happens to be. You can use that data validation there as well. So some of those advanced like branching or data validation, and those aren't necessarily new features to forms, but they're certainly advanced features that we don't use incredibly often in the classroom. Last thing is to be able to add a collaborator to work on this or edit this with me. And you can simply do that by clicking on the 3 dots and click add collaborators. Okay. And then I can add folks to this. And then once again, I can make them only an editor. So this is different than docs or slides where you can be like a viewer. If I add a collaborator, that person can edit. But the nice thing you saw here that is not a feature on some of the docs and slides is I can actually add an expiration access to this person. Okay, and I can do that by clicking the edit pencil and coming here. And so you can think of specific reasons why maybe you would want someone to have access to be able to edit it, but then remove them. If we're working on building a specific quiz or form, maybe you want kids, a really good idea is to have kids build their own like review quiz or their own quiz. You want them to be able to go in and contribute and add questions, maybe for the class period, but then they're going to lose edit access after that. And then all the questions or whatever the materials are happen to be there. So there's some different features with collaborators that don't exist, say, in docs or slides. So those are some advanced tools in Google Forms.